Hey, this is Keith from Atlanta Trifecta. I'm going to do a quick review on the Landsknecht Emporium Dussacks. Before I get to those, I want to do a quick overview of some of my favorite Dussack trainers, along with my opinion on some Dussack trainers. First off, we have a good friend, the nylon trainer. This one's actually a spec trainer, but Purple Heart makes them as well. I believe there's a few others who make them. I'm not a fan of nylon, but if that's all you have, it does an okay job. I like the length of the Purple Heart and the spec. They're both about the same length, about 32 inches total. I'm not a fan of the earlier version, which is actually still production, and the triangular Purple Heart one. We all know the version 1s pretty well. It's about 28 inches long. Personally, to me, that's too short. Anything from like 30 to 33 inches, I think, is actually what most of the trainers we see in the manuals were about in length. There were probably shorter ones, just as the probably longer ones. But for me, for a trainer, especially in nylon or wooden or leather, and we're trying to see it matching up to what they had in the text that we see, it's about the same. Why do I think this? If you look at this and you start looking at the images and when they're holding all the stuff, we get about the same length coming out at the end as we see, in the books with these slightly longer trainers. It's my opinion, could be wrong. If you think I am wrong, please let me know. I am always up for a good debate. But anyway, this is the first style. It's okay. Oh, Purple Heart version 2 Dussack. This has been my baby for years. I love these things. Again, they're about 32 inches long. I actually think this is a little bit shorter, about 31. It's essentially this with a leather covering. It's great. I picked these up 2013 after Long Point 2012 when we used them for the Dussack, I believe the last major Dussack tournament, ignoring Surfo, which at the time was way smaller than Long Point as far as Dussack tournaments go. But we used these there. They're great. They bind. They have okay flex, and they're long enough. Unfortunately, Purple Heart discontinued them because nobody was buying them. Everyone wanted the version 1s because people don't want to train Dussack, they want to play with a Dussack. Which is fair enough, but it's not what I want. But yeah, these were great. Wish Christian and Natasha had reasons to keep making them, because honestly, this is what most people should be using if you really want to practice Dussack. The next one is my new favorite synthetic leather, whatever you want to call it, trainer. This is the AK5, I believe, model from Alan Carlson. He made it at my specs. It's not historical, but I like it. It's quirky. David Rawlings has already done a good review on how Alan construct these and how they work. They're pretty much all the same construction. You got a leather core with some plastic on the outside pinning it in. He can do them in wood as well if you want to make it a little bit fancier. It obviously costs a little bit more. The AK5 has a little bit of a nagel like you see in Paul's Hector Meyer, I believe. And he also gave me a little bit of a raised back edge, a Yellman if you want to call it. So if we use the James Elmsley typology, this is sort of like a 4A type blade, shall we say. I really love these. You do need to wear a little bit of protection if you're fencing with these and you don't trust your friends. Yeah, they hit hard. They hit harder than this, which is chunky and it looks like it hits hard. Most of my guys, we free fence with these with minimal protection all the time, and it's not that big a deal. These can hurt, but these are great trainers. This one's about 32 inches, like I said. you know, I like that 32-inch range, and I asked Alan to make it for me, so he made it for me. Yeah, if you want a good leather trainer right now, Alan's your man. Hit him up. They're great trainers. So that's all of the leather, synthetic, whatever you have. We're going to go into steel, which is the main point of this video. There really isn't a lot of good steel Dussack trainers. I know that Castile Armory makes a few. I'm honestly not a fan of it. I think it's a little too expensive for what it is, and it just doesn't feel right. I've held them. They're not bad. It's just not what I personally want. Arms and Armor are going to be making one, and they will be making a more basic one. Think of something like this, but in steel. I think they're basically trying to keep the price down, right? Once you start making a basket, any type of basket, it bumps up the price, which is a part of the reason why the Castile one is as pricey as it is. Balefire makes one. David Rawlings, again, the inestimable David Rawlings, owns that one, and it looks great. Hopefully someday I'll get to go to London and train with him and play with that Dussack. I've been to London too many times now and not been able to get a chance to go see him. And who else makes one? I know Darkwood makes one. Again, it's okay. I'm not a fan. They do a much better, like back sword, Scottish basket hill type sword. I really like those from them, but their Dussack, there's always been issues, right? Part issues, people haven't had access to the stats on Dussacks, Tessacks, whatever you want to call them. They've not held antiques, so they're really not sure how they should feel. They're just looking at the pictures, and that lends to some weird things, right? Also, for the longest time, people have had this impression that all Dussacks are short and stubby. Tooting my own horn, thanks to Roger Norling, who put me onto it. I came across the Norwegian Museum collection of Tessack, which is the Norwegian word for the Dussack, coming from the Czech word for Tessack, you know how it goes. And they have about 500 in their collection. Most of them actually are intact, about 300 odd are intact. And I did a quick little chart and came up with the numbers, and the average actually ended up being about 92 centimeters long total. It's about 36 inches in total. The range being, I'm going to go imperial. I've been in the States for too long. So about 34 inches to about 37 was the top of your bell curve, right? And you have shorter ones, don't get me wrong, you have 28-inch ones. You also have about 40-inch ones. And there's also a typology that a Norwegian professor came up with in the 70s for Dussacks that goes from A to H. It's based off of the hilt construction. So the basket is what designs or gives it the typology, not the blade. And I'll show you some blades in a second once we get to the Landsknecht Emporium. So based off of that findings, which honestly, I was expecting from being a Dussack guy and going through Herman Historica and Cerne and all the museums and seeing the averages, that was about what I was expecting, I'll be honest. But I think for a lot of people it was unexpected, right? They expected it to be shorter, right? 30, 32 tops, but it's not. All right, so going on to steel. Let's do some steel. This was my first steel trainer for Dussack. It is made by Marin Kristecki. I'm going to slaughter the name. He is from Slovakia. Unfortunately, he's currently not making swords at the moment. He's got a chronic injury. Unfortunately, that means that he can't do it. I hope he gets back into being able to be a smith. He's one of the best out there, guys. He's amazing. I had one of his feathers for years. I retired it about a year ago because I broke. But it lasted me for about 4 years of really hard tournament fencing. And he made this Dussack, I think, originally for Roger Norling. I believe it's based off some stats that we see in one in Slovakia. It's got the traditional looking Dussack guard, right? This is what everyone expects the Dussack to be. It's a beautiful piece. I love it. It balances really well in the hands. Totally, it's about 33 inches long. Again, if we use the Elmsley typology, it's probably a 5 plus, maybe a plus plus. But it's a 5 blade, right? And honestly, this type of blade was very common in Dussacks. If you look again through the Norwegian one or through Harman Historica, who have about 30, 40 different models up there, this is the average blade that we see, right? I love this trainer. It's wonderful. Flex is a little not there, but everything else is good. It's great in the bind. Hand protection is amazing, and it's got the nice little traditional sort of squared off, pommel that we see in a lot of this style of Dussack. And this, when we think Dussack, this is what we think, right? I'm brain farting right now. I should know. I think this is a Type E, Type D. In the typology, that's disgraceful. I'm just brain farting. But yeah, this was my first one. I got it several years ago when Marin put it up on his website. He made 2, I think, when he was making Rogers, and I jumped on it. So after I went through the Norwegian museum stuff, I wanted the trainer again. I had fallen in love with Landsknecht Emporium's messers. We have several in my club. They are just wonderful. They're some of the most historically accurate ones I know, which makes sense because those guys, that's all they do is messer. Messers and knives. They're branching out now to other stuff. And to me, I think they were the best people to make the blade for what I wanted for Dussack, because it's similar, right? We can go into the history and the origins of Dussacks all day long. That's not what we're into today. So I hit them up and they basically went, yes, we want to do this. So they made 2 for me. I'll pick the less interesting one first. The guard's the same in both of my swords, right? So this is, if you can get into the camera, about 36 inches in total, 92-ish centimeters. It is based on the averages of everything we could find in the Norwegian Museum, right? The length of the blade is 70-something centimeters. I'm brain farting that right now. I think it's about 28 inches. Point of balance is about here, which is about, well, that's about 4 inches out. And it's a Type G typology hilt, okay? Most of the Type Gs actually had this like little cool little piece of artwork or whatever on it. They made it for me pretty much as close to as they could for a historical piece. So if you look at the gap between the handle and the protection itself, it's pretty narrow. But I like it that way. And we also have thumb ring, which a lot of Dussacks had thumb rings. And there's a very, very cool little bit of scalloping right here, which was in one of the examples that they used. It's just a tasteful little bit of artwork, or whatever you want to say, to make it a little bit more interesting. The sword, both swords are in about the 12 or 1100 gram range, right? They're actually a little bit heavier than the steel sharps they're based on, but they feel wonderful in hand. They're very flexible, right? These are safe. These are very safe to fence with. We've been fencing with them over the past week, and we've had no issues at all. We do not feel like there's any problems with them. I'll be honest, we're still testing them, okay? But my initial reaction is, if you want to steal Dussack, this is it, right? This blade, like I said before, this is a 5 with the Elmsley typology. probably a 5 plus. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. There we go. But there's a double fuller in this blade. Landsknecht did this on purpose. You know, Dussack would have just had that single fuller, but to try and pull down the weight a little bit, they added another fuller on the bottom for me. It's not historical, but I like it, and it's, you know, it does the job. This one, as you can see, a little different. We got this nice little Yeoman back edge going. This would be a 4A under the Elmsley typology. There's not much difference to it besides the different blade. Obviously, it's this cooler looking. This is the one I like, right? That's always the case. The grip's the same, the gap's the same. Actually, I didn't mention just another one, but the length of the handle is just enough for my hand to fit uncomfortably, right? And if we got a leather glove on or a padded leather glove on, it fits really nicely here. It's not been designed to accommodate, you know, the heavier protection we use. But honestly, you know, you're not going to get hit here pretty easily. To me, it's a similar amount of protection as you would see in a ring-hilt rapier, and we wear padded gloves with those all the time, so I don't have a problem with it. Again, I don't know if you can see, but there's the double fuller going on in this sword as well, again to pull that weight down, and they did a really wonderful job with it. You know, I can't say enough about these swords. They're flexible, the edge is very good, they bind very well. I'm very much more of a cut and thrusty guy with Dussacks, and this just makes me want to cut at you. If you parry me, I'm going to wind, I'm going to try to thrust in against you. Overall, it's a great sword. Are there any negatives? Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you like. Like, I know some of my guys want a slightly bigger handle or slightly wider gap in the protection so they can fit a bigger glove in to feel a little safer. That's a fair point. For some people, this might be too flexible, right? Because when, you know, sword hits, there's a little bit of a shake going on. I don't find that a big issue, but again, for some people it can be a valid point. There's nothing against that. These are handmade, so they're not perfect, right? So the fuller is a little different on both sides. Personally, I like that aesthetic. I like handmade. On the inside, they didn't bother polishing out the inside, right? As you can see all the hammer marks. Again, I don't mind that. It's historically accurate to me, right? I like it. I like how it feels. I like how it looks. I think they did a wonderful job. I'm still not 100% sure how much they're going to cost. I know it's going to be above 300, I think in the 3 to 350 euro range. They still haven't gone to me, so don't quote me on that just yet. They obviously have to figure it out themselves to figure out how much time it's worth for them, right? But as far as these trainers go, I mean, like, again, I'm, you know, nothing against Sam and the rest of the Castile Armory guys. They do a wonderful job. These cost about the same, maybe a little cheaper than their Dussack offering, and, you know, I'm nowhere I'm telling my guys to go buy their Dussacks. You know, for other stuff, I send them to Castile. For rapiers, all day long, Castile. They do a wonderful job for those. But, you know, it is what it is. Oh, also, the tip, I don't know if you can see it, all they did was just make it a little fatter, right? It's not rolled. It's just been beaten out, so it's a little bit thicker. We've stabbed ourselves extensively with these in the past couple of days, and it doesn't hurt. It's a good job. The overall, you know, they did a wonderful job with these. These feel like Dussacks. I've held a couple of antiques at this stage, and these are the closest to feeling right, you know. You know, obviously, they had dogs back in the day, and, you know, that's what it is. But Bill Grandy owns a Dussack, and I've held it many a time, and this is the closest I've held that definitely feels close to his. It's wonderful. I love these. I cannot recommend Landsknecht Emporiums enough. Last thing, this is a really long video, so I do apologize. But I just wanted to show off some more stuff that Landsknecht Emporium can do, right? This is a messer that they made. I believe it's just a prototype. You know, we just love this. It's ridiculous. I believe again it's based off of a historical piece. They have that double fuller again. They do this a lot to try to pull the weight down. It looks good, so I can't hate on it, right? We got brass crossguard fixings at the end, which just gives it a little spark. There's no pommels, just solid wood, and we got that ring nagel that we do see on some later period messers, right? It's stuff like this that made me want to use Landsknecht Emporium to do Dussacks. You know, it was just a beautiful piece. I might end up keeping this, I'm not sure. But yeah, you know, these guys can make this, right? So if you want a messer, if you want a Dussack, anything like that, Landsknecht Emporium, hit them up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I won't take up any more of your time. This video's gone on for way too long, but I wanted to give you a rundown of what's available for Dussack training. If you know, take it seriously, guys. Really, you got Dussack in Meyer, in Paulus Hector Meyer or Mayer. You know, you got it in Codex Gulf 83.4. We see it in other 16th century sources, right? Coloner, I believe, or the Cologne Fecht book has some Dussack. It's all over the place. This was something that they took seriously. This was a serious weapon. You know, we now have options to start taking it seriously. So let's take it seriously. Let's bring Dussack back. Let's make it popular again. And it's a very interesting weapon. And it's a lot of fun. All right. Thank you for listening to me pontificate for far too long.